The SEC is alleging that Goldman Sachs engaged in some fraudulent activity regarding subprime mortgage securities with one of the largest and most well-known hedge funds out there. I'm here with Fortune's Colin Barr to talk about this, and it's shocking on so many levels. I guess the first thing I would say that I'd love to get your thoughts on are the SEC showing some backbone, some spine here.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
Long overdue, isn't it?
It's remarkable. And earlier this week I was at a conference where we were talking about why weren't there any SEC actions, and in that case we were talking about Lehman Brothers. Repo 105 has been what we've been talking about for the last month.
Right.
But out of the blue, these guys show that they haven't fallen asleep and that they remember that the housing bubble did actually happen. So that's nice to see.
No, it's definitely encouraging. I would have to think, on Friday when this news came out, Goldman Sachs' stock immediately plunged. All the other big banks also down on the news. So the quote-unquote good news from J.P. Morgan Chase's earnings beat and Bank of America's have quickly faded, and everyone's focused on this. Is this the right thing to be focusing on? I mean, how significant really is this for the whole banking sector?
I think it's big, and I think it's kind of similar. Last quarter, you'll remember when Goldman reported earnings, they had a huge number. They had a very good quarter, and they also held their compensation down, which added to their profits.
Right.
And so there was a lot of talk. Goldman blew the cover off. Are they going to really? Are they going to really? Have their stock spike today? And then that was the day Volcker came out and said, I want something to happen here so we don't have this too big to fail problem anymore. And we haven't made much progress on that, but the fact that the SEC is showing some teeth and the fact that the administration seems now more behind financial reform than it was before, those are huge issues for bank investors to be considering. I mean, even if we don't have Justice Department charges brought against Goldman in a case like this, this is a big overhang.
Right, and that is an important clarification there, that right now these are civil complaints regarding Goldman, right. Nothing criminal as of yet. But I would have to think, to remind our readers, Goldman Sachs will be reporting its financial results on Tuesday.
That's right.
And I think it's safe to say that their numbers are probably going to be very good. But is this quickly overshadowing even a big earnings beat that many people are expecting from Goldman?
I have to think it does. I mean, again, last quarter, the Volcker statement overshadowed their strong earnings so much that their stock was down sharply that day. The stock has spent basically the intervening 3 months, creeping back up to, above where it was on that day, but they're giving back a lot of gains today, and there are just so many uncertainties right now for the banks. I think that the tide has turned against the banks to a certain amount. This week we had Richard Fisher, who's the Fed.
I love that guy. Right, man crush on the Dallas Federal Reserve president. Yes.
Yeah, and he's now is quoting this guy Andrew Haldane from the Bank of England, who's been making the case for many months. We have to break up the banks. Here's why we have to do this. He even calls the banks polluters. And when you have a guy like Fisher, who's not some lefty wingnut, making this case as well, it really shows that this message is starting to sink in, and people are taking very seriously the notion that we have to keep Goldman Sachs and the rest of these guys from blowing us up the next time. So it'll be interesting to see how the second half of the year plays out with the legislative side of it and with the courts.
Definitely, I agree, and that's I think a fantastic point that every bank investor needs to be aware of. But even just beyond bank investors, I think this is hopefully good news for the American consumer. Many of them are still very angry at Wall Street and Washington for being asleep at the wheel when many of these shenanigans were taking place. So this is hopefully a good sign of more tough action to come from the SEC. The final question I would have that I just couldn't resist, Lloyd Blankfein got a lot of heat. He's the CEO of Goldman Sachs for saying, not that long ago, in jest apparently, that he and other Goldman people were just doing God's work. So alleged fraud is God's work. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting. And of course the other thought, you wrote a column last year that shut up Lloyd Blankfein because he was apologizing for nothing in particular, and talking about how we have duties that even compete with return on equity and things like that. And so he has a lot more to shut up about now. But I don't suppose he will. I think we'll hear a lot from him about the firm's culture and how that they would never, this would never happen except for a rogue employee. So I imagine the blame game is going to be on pretty seriously with these guys.
Yes, definitely. Earth to Lloyd Blankfein. I told you to shut up a couple of months ago. Well, maybe I was wrong, because if the SEC is right, and again, these are allegations only, just allegations for now, you do have a lot more to apologize for specifically. Thanks.